Hey, oh, yes.
Freedom, folks. Welcome back to another edition of the Me Mortals podcast. I've got Kyrin here with me.
Hello, folks.
And it is Juan right here, right in the chair. Tonight we're signing off a late one, and we're going to be talking about freedom. So I gave everybody at home a task.
Homework assignment.
Some mandatory actions that you got to take. So if you haven't listened into Seeking Freedom, Near-Death Experiences, and Reordering Your Place in the World,
do it.
Tim Ferriss with Sebastian Junger, episode 513. Go check it out. Go give it a quick listen. Even at least just go read the description to see what it was all about. And right off the get-go, Kyrin mentioned to me just before, like literally 10 seconds before I started recording the podcast, hey Juan, you're probably going to have to run this one because I didn't take too many notes.
I got a couple, but
I
didn't like the guy that much.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Maybe I don't know if we'll bring it up in this podcast, but maybe it'd be worth talking about it in a separate context.
No, I'm gonna.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah. Those are my notes. All of my notes are just shitting on Sebastian.
Shitting on Sebastian. Excellent. But one of the reasons that I predominantly enjoyed that podcast, there was some stuff in it that I was like, okay, yeah, I really enjoyed. But he said something around freedom. In his definition of freedom. I thought, oh, that's what got me kind of interested. So more from my side was the definition of freedom, but a little bit more of exploratory because I'd be interested to find out what that looks like to you. You know, when we're talking about what are we on money? Oh, so we're going to be flexible, free. We're going to be free, freedom. I don't know if we've explored that path of what freedom looks like. So takeaway from this podcast is that I heard his definition and I want to talk about it.
Okay.
So we can kind of go there. Maybe we'll have a look at why he disagreed on some of his points. Because there were some points that I was like, oh, okay, whatever. I don't agree with some of the points you're talking about. And maybe then we'll venture into just personally, what does freedom look like? Because I think it's often not talked about in a deep sense.
Yep.
So
cool.
I don't know if you found a definition.
Yeah, I did. So just before that though, the whole podcast itself wasn't just about freedom.
No.
So there was bits about parenting. There was bits about his trekking, more like wilderness, which is related to freedom, and I guess that's where he's talking.
Yeah, there was something
a bit about his
near-death experience.
Yeah, that one was a pretty big part, and being a war journalist as well. So yeah, the bulk of it was around freedom, but there was other parts.
There was other parts, definitely. So I'm going to focus in on the freedom.
Okay, there was another part which I'm going to call you out on as well.
Ah, excellent. Which one?
All right. I think you're worrying about getting old because there's 2 podcasts in a row now where it's someone talking about getting old and trying to keep it together.
Like the edge one.
Yeah.
Oh,
exactly.
okay.
So
That's true.
Mere mortals out there.
That's true.
One's scared of turning
Although
29.
thinking about it, there was something I was listening, veering a little bit off path around someone like a top sports person, like when a sports person at like 35, 36, when they get off the horse and then the next year they'll feel like really unfit and whatnot. And I thought a couple of months back, is that what's happening to me? But I don't know, just the other day, like literally just the other day, I went, man, I'm feeling like incredibly fit now, like really, really fit. I'm feeling healthy. I'm like, oh, okay, maybe I'm turning around the corner. Or maybe I won't. Just you watch. It's going to be an injury coming around the corner. Okay, definition, freedom.
Yes. So I looked up and it was mostly the ability to act or change without restraint. I think that was the bulk one. And it's sort of tied to liberty as well. So there's freedom in a broad context. And then there's liberty, which is specific to humans being able to be free. So now that I've been shitting on Americans in the past for saying we're the freest country in the world, and then it's like, but have you looked at your incarceration rates, people? They're ridiculous. How can you say that? Huge. But maybe they were speaking in freedom in the sense of the ability to act or change without restraint. Because man, they act without restraint there, I would say. I think
very
that's
much
a very good indication of Americans.
Yep.
So that's not. So if they said we're the most like liberty freedom, and we're the most liberty, we have the most liberty in the world. Then I could
get on board with that.
But maybe with freedom, maybe they're not talking about freedom in sense of being behind jail.
Okay,
which they're usually not.
Yeah, true. So this was the biggest thing that got to me, right? And I should have done this. I didn't go and find his direct quote on it.
I don't remember him saying directly. Otherwise, I would have written that down.
Yeah. So his was. He might have alluded to it. So basically, his definition of freedom was.
In fact, he didn't. I remember he specifically said there's
no real definition for it,
or there is so many definitions out there, But then he didn't specify for himself, even though he wrote a bloody book on it. Step number one, Sebastian. That's number one. I'm going to write a list of all the things.
And yes. So he released a recent book called Freedom. Didn't define it. So no, problem one, I think, people need to define goddamn freedom. So if you think you've got freedom, wrong. Define it. Define it, goddammit.
Wrong.
We're telling you that's restricted freedom.
Wrong. You're already in.
So, but this is the biggest thing. So he basically said, probably was in a mix of words. So I don't know how I took this so blatantly came to me, but he said it's basically to be able to act in your own manner against larger or more powerful entities. Okay. That was the biggest thing that I took away from that podcast, in the sense that he spelled out freedom as okay, it's the ability for you to act in whatever manner you want against another entity that's of a larger power. And it's that opposing larger power, larger entity that is the key thing there, which I think we'll speak a little bit more about some of the things about freedom and why it's so hard to have a conversation about. Because for me, I went, okay, the definition of, so another definition, right? The power, right to act, speak, or think as one wants. So it's one as something like that you want. But there's a context of what is freedom without any other individual on earth? So it's almost like a comparison to create freedom. Or else, if you were just the only human on earth, do you have freedom?
Yeah.
In that point, what's the perspective there? So I liked his view on, okay, it's a comparison to something else of a higher power. And then that makes me think, okay, well, you could then claim okay, well, you might have freedom to act in your own manner when compared to what the government might dictate, or what your teacher might say, or what your trainer might say. So in those regards is kind of what I took it from. What are some things though that you disagreed on the podcast? So I want to talk through those first. We get them, we'll discuss them. I think it'll be good to talk about them.
Yeah, well, I guess for me it's not that related to freedom. So I think we should do your stuff first, because it's
before we get to okay.
All my stuff was it was sort of side notes that I just didn't like.
Excellent. All right. Well, so I think tune in for the side notes at the very end. All right. Well, first question with you is, why do you find that it is difficult to have a meaningful conversation about freedom? Okay. And that almost dictates that it is difficult.
Well, yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't even say that applies to me. I've never particularly thought it's difficult to have a conversation. So,
well, yeah,
Uno card,
reverse. Yeah.
Have you had conversations that have been difficult about freedom?
I think it's more that it's difficult to spell it out. It's difficult to actually denote what is freedom to oneself, in the sense that, let's take the old adage of, oh, why do you want money? Oh, because I want to have freedom. Okay. And then the definition of okay, well, what does freedom entail? Is it that you want to go and do anything you want to do? Is it just go free? Is it kill people? Is it just go madman, just jump through windows? What does freedom actually look like? And I don't know, and looking at the definitions, to act in your own manner. But I almost feel that unrestrictiveness of just doing whatever you want almost takes away from what could be considered freedom. And so that's where I struggled to have that conversation of, okay, what does freedom look like? And maybe it was a good point to ask you this question, because, I feel like I struggle with asking what freedom is. If I was to say to you, okay, what would freedom look like to you? How would you explain that?
Yeah, okay. That's a better way of putting it. So I would probably say, something along the lines of doing what I want, first of all. So doing what you want, what does that mean? I would say, probably not having to do things I don't like that are super repetitive, super boring. So let's just take work, for example.
Yep.
Now you could say, what about cleaning your teeth? Yeah, cleaning my teeth not the best, but then that's more getting into sacrifices you have to make I'm not sure freedom's the best context to think about a small insignificant thing like that. It's just whatever. So freedom to travel, freedom to associate with people I want. I would say more looking at, for me, freedom would be looking at all the other places in the world where people are in not great circumstances and just saying I don't want that. So I don't want to all the women around me to have to wear burqas. That doesn't seem fair. I don't want to have to be careful about hugging a guy because maybe people will think I'm gay and then stone me or whatever.
Yeah.
So I'd say in that context, but I'm sort of happy with just being to do what I want and I don't particularly want to kill people. So that's
this was good. I think even splitting it down, because I think you could look at freedom in the holistic social aspect, broad context, as in, okay, we want the whole culture to be free. Maybe I'd put it, or maybe the tribe to be free, in the sense that, okay, we should all be free from oppression, or we should all be free to do, carry on our social activities to whatever we want to do, right? So there's that social freedom. Let's just call it that way. But then the other one I'm thinking is more some of those personal freedoms. Do you think they should just be given, or should they be earned? Because that's another one that I get into an interesting conundrum in my mind, in the sense of, okay, let's think of health, right? So the freedom to be healthy, to do what you want with your body, to be able to, say, run around, whatever it may be. But some of that freedom, even if it's just as an individual, that's not just given to you. That's like you earn that freedom through, you want to call it, say, I guess that's why Jocko says it, right? Discipline, being free through discipline, basically, right? Discipline equals freedom. So that to me is like, okay, well, you do your training, you eat well, whatever. So you can be free to be able to move around whenever you want, to be able to be healthy for a long time, etc. I think that struggle line of, okay, freedom being earned. Do you agree with that? Like,
yeah, well, so when Jordan Peterson talks about this, he'll talk about, if you want all the rights you can get, you want the right to free speech, you want the right to associate with whoever you can, you want the right to have a healthy life with your family, you want all these rights, and you grab them as much as you can. You want the right to be able to divorce, you want the right to be able to have same-sex marriage, whatever it is. And then he was saying, but you always got to remember, on the opposite side, there's the responsibility associated with that. So very similar to Jocko's discipline equals freedom. It's just another way of wording it, I guess, which is, for each one of those things, there's a responsibility. You want to have, and this is not going to be directly linked, but it's sort of, you want to play in the society where you get all these rights, where you have to have the responsibility of maintaining that society. So whether that be through joining the army, whether that be through supporting, volunteering, just working like a normal human being, I guess. You can't just check out and be like, oh, no, I want the rights to free healthcare for the rest of my life. Well, it's not really free. Nothing's really free. You gotta pay for it somehow. So yeah, I would definitely say those. Yeah, I guess if you're talking about freedom in that sense, once again, I'd say like it's better to talk. Maybe there's just a word which I don't associate it with. Like, what was that one we both struggled on? Xenophobia. It's sort of like, there's just always better words to use if you're talking about a particular context. So
like you wouldn't use it for everything that it's exactly denoted for, but you could use it, but you just go and use something else.
Yeah. So like in this case, you're talking about the responsibility. I would say, rights then, human
rather
rights.
Than the freedom.
Yeah.
So, okay, because I really want to understand what it would be like for you. And again, and maybe it's just that I struggle with this description. So one of the things I was asking in my mind was like, okay, from a freedom perspective. So if you were, let's just imagine you're the king, the ruler across all societies, all world, what would you mandate? What would you mandate as like, okay, I'm taking away this whatever freedom you think, no, you're going to do this. So what freedom would you take away in terms of benefiting to helping society in whatever you view it?
Yeah.
And what freedom would you try to introduce that maybe already doesn't exist in society at large?
Yeah, I'm super annoyed because I thought of this very same thing the other day.
Oh, really? I'll let you have a think because I do have an answer for the first one. So, for me, so what freedom would I take away from humans? What freedom would I take away from society in general? To give you an idea of, okay, in my mind, what I would do. I would mandate, be like, nah, you're not free to do this for an hour a day. You must work out. And the only freedom bit is you choose what the workout is. You choose whether it's running, you choose whether it's gym, CrossFit, swimming, rowing, I don't care, jacking off, whatever it may be. But you got to work out in that 1 hour. You must work out. You can go more, but I'm taking away your freedom. Like cannot do...
What's the definition of a workout?
The definition of a workout?
Yeah. Like does your heart rate need to extend beyond a certain level? Can, just wiggling your toes count as exercise?
Oh, it's a good point.
So is a slow walk then considered?
A slow walk is considered. Yeah, I'd consider a slow walk as long as maybe I'll put like you're moving your whole body.
Okay.
At least through that hour. So it's not just laying on a bed and then wiggling your toes around. So as long as you're doing that, I'd be like, I would remove that freedom for people. No, you must do this.
Yeah, yeah.
Maybe you can have a day off through the week. But I'd say, no, this is mandatory. I feel like, no, don't put that freedom to people. But what freedom that I would introduce to the world that maybe already doesn't exist, I think I would allow more freedom of speech, without direct without direct default negativity coming towards it unless required. And see, this is I'm trying to put it in better words. You know, when you don't get people to say something, but you know that it's truly terrible, you should remove that out
again. Don't get people to say something.
So I would say that more freedom to be able to speak your own mind.
Okay.
More freedom to be able to speak your own mind. So
Yeah,
I think that we are venturing down the path of being a little bit too restrictive on what we say.
Yeah, okay. I'm the opposite, man.
Oh, okay.
I mean, look, I don't personally care, but people are saying their stupid views to me.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily want or need to hear that.
True.
Not that
true.
I'm going to lock down on it, but yeah, me personally, whatever. You can say what you want, but that also doesn't mean that I have to hear it. So,
oh no,
I
true.
would
introduce
maybe like a law of, if someone tells you, if someone instigates a conversation and the very first thing they say is some of their stupid opinion, you get to like slap them or something like that, or you get to.
That's a freedom. You get to reduce your speech if it's stupid. Nah, that's it.
I was actually just thinking, man. Noises, like really loud noises. I would restrict the right to really loud noises.
Ooh,
so
okay.
if you make like a certain noise above a certain level,
decibel.
So yeah, so if you're hitting your drums and you're right next door to your next door neighbor, that's not acceptable. You've got to go find some property elsewhere
that you can go do that.
Go do that. Yeah. Yeah. I honestly don't know, man. I haven't thought too much about this topic. And yeah, what I was thinking of before, it was something, very silly, very ridiculous as well. Sort of along the lines of like, you have to work out, you have to do this one thing.
Yeah. That's what I would impose, man. I would 100% impose the working out.
I think
thing.
you'd be a tyrant, man.
I'd be a tyrant for the working out, or at least some sort of like staying fit.
I think you would get overthrown very quickly if you implemented that one.
You reckon?
Yeah.
Oh, I think there'd be a lot of people that would hate it. If I just didn't mandate like what time you're today, but it would still be an hour.
No. I think there'd be and what happens if you miss your quota of exercise? You get thrown in prison and have to do hard work.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. You have to even do more.
You have to do 2 hours instead.
Now, interestingly, I don't know, you've been talking about poems as of late, and it kind of got me thinking. I found this poem by Edward Thomas.
Okay.
So I was actually looking at it. I actually stumbled upon this, not even looking for this topic, I was just looking at something else, and then I found this and I was like, ooh, this is interesting. So, Edward Thomas, I'll read it out. It is as everything else had slept. Many an age unforgotten and lost, the men that wear the things done long ago. All I have thought, and but the moon and I live yet and here stand idle over a grave, where all is buried, both have liberty, to dream what we could do if we were free, to do some things we had desired long. The moon and I, there's none less free than who does nothing and has nothing else to do, being free only for what is not to his mind, and nothing is to his mind. So, that particular poem I was reading through and I was like, gets me thinking. Because, I was saying a little bit earlier, freedom when one has nothing else to do. So, to be theoretically truly free, but when you're theoretically truly free, when you have the freedom to absolutely do anything, like you have nothing else to do, it's almost like the inverse. Like you do not have any freedom at that point because you just have nothing else to be free for.
Yeah, I mean, that's what makes a game fun. It's the restraints of the game. It's the fact that I can't just pick up a soccer ball when I'm in the middle of the match and then run it in like a rugby ball.
Yep.
That's what makes soccer fun, or football, however you want to say it. So yeah, I totally agree with that. And I was just thinking it's beneficial in so many ways. If you ever say like, true freedom, complete freedom to do whatever I want, to say whatever I want, act however I want, it's anarchy when it gets to that stage. Because when you think of, how many regulations are in place to stop people putting lead in children's toys and things like that. All of those things, you could just say, man, so much rules, so much regulations for businesses, for people. Even now, I can't legally cross the street when there's a pedestrian crossing or a light crossing. If it's within 50 meters of that place.
Yeah, I hate that.
Yeah, so there's all these rules out there. And would getting rid of all of them or most of them make things better?
Probably not.
Yeah, me personally, I just like having lots of rules. That makes life easier for me. So I tend to be more on the
have rules and less rules.
Yeah, and that I think in general makes me more of a right-leaning person, because I just think Republicans or whatever the Australian version of that, Liberals are. I think that's more like their philosophy in general. But yeah, I don't know. So of however many laws there are in Australia, what would you do with them if you were president of Australia? If you could just click your fingers, would you increase them? Would you decrease them? Would you be selective with them? What do you reckon?
I think I'd be selective. I wouldn't change altogether too many, apart from the working out rule. But I wouldn't change too many. I mean, if you went and changed too many, I think it'd just be anarchy at all levels. Depending if you'd reduce or if you add, it'd just be like madness. Because I was going to say, it's almost to the point of like, because you need limitations to have freedom. Like if you have no limitations, you truly can't have freedom because there's nothing to be limited by. So as you say, just anarchy. It just doesn't matter. So I think having the rules that are in place at least lets you find the freedom that is within that game, within that sort of boundary that you can limit it yourself to. It's like, oh, okay, well, that's the freedom. You can move around in there.
Yeah. Okay. So here's one I did get from the podcast. So let's say you've got a tyranny, so 0% freedom for the average citizen. Then you've got anarchy, which I would say is 100% freedom. And let's just say for the moment we're in the middle, democracy is like in the middle. We've got the perfect balance or whatnot. And humans, I think we tend to like towards more freedom. Ooh, more freedom. That sounds like a good thing, right? What happens if the more you go that way, the more it becomes of like an oppressive sort of freedom? And this is where we're getting into inequality. So they talked about this a little. So first of all, I found I was super surprised Tim had never heard of the Gini coefficient before.
I thought he'd already talked about that previously.
Yeah. And but they talked about inequality, and he was saying to a certain extent it's very good and even just in a way, because that reflects, I guess, there's getting into the injustice podcast we talked about, where two people doing, just grab two random people. One's going to be good at one good thing. One's going to be good at another good thing. But they're not both going to be good at the exact same thing. And so you don't expect equal results. And there's where you get these huge differences in wealth. Now, the Gini coefficient, you're saying, oh, whoa, that's way too high in, our countries over here. That's bad. But it was those countries which had a higher ones tended to be more like beneficial overall. That's what he was saying, right? It was like the ones where it was super equal was bad in a way because they would not develop as quickly. Like everyone was at the same level, but it was a shit level.
It was a shit level, yeah.
So the ones where you had some really big inequalities, the rich king or the rich bankers or whatever it is, those are the ones where everyone tends to get lifted up,
like it sort of like lifts all seas as opposed to everyone being at the same level, but being at a very much lower level. So it's like those highest of highs do bring the median up more than it brings like the lowest of the lows down. Yeah.
And so then you'd say, well, that doesn't seem, fair in a way. And it's weird because that's where it was like, maybe having less freedom and, freedom to make money in this case, it helps everyone by that not being there, by only a select few having that ability.
Yeah. And I just in the broader context of of freedom, it's almost the in the collective, because like an individual might see that this is taking away maybe my freedom, right? But in the collective, the freedom, like sort of the freedom to act in the collective as the tribe, as a group, within the boundary that they set, actually improves everyone. Like, so in this manner, it's almost like all seas rise, as opposed to, we're going to be specific for like, this particular person. So sometimes, and this is probably more from I'm thinking like a government perspective or another, bigger power applying onto you, but not just you, but maybe multiple different people. It's sort of like, if you're really expecting that they're going to set the freedom specifically to what you might think, it's like, well, think again. Like, that's never going to happen. Like, there's no government out there that's going to be operating purely for just what you want, or like a big company that's going to be like, oh yes, we're going to let you have whatever you think is the most freedom to work in whatever way. Yeah, that's totally fine. And I was talking to you a little bit of an example, I guess, from work, and I won't share it now, but sometimes even in the workplace, people talk in the freedom. I wish I had the freedom to go and do this, or be innovative, or investigate this stuff, or maybe work on a different tech stack, or work on mobile applications, etc., whatever it may be. And it's like, well, to have that freedom, it's almost like before that you need to be trusted by working in the game that's limited and bounded to be like, okay, you can operate in that. Okay, you can now be free to operate in that game. But it's not like, as a business, you'll be like, okay, well, we've got to make money. You ain't just going to decide to be free and go and, plow the land, or go and pot some sunflowers. Like, okay, well, no, that's freedom in the context that you might want to do it, but doesn't meet, the context of a company, or doesn't meet like that game that's being played. And if it isn't, it's sort of like, okay, well, you're not going to be playing in that game. So I just think that, like, broadly, socially, like broadly across, maybe thinking, I'm not going to go world, but maybe like a city, or a particular, cultural location where there's a lot of people, if you think like, oh, well, freedom is, something stupid, like whacking people in the head with skateboards. I don't know. And it's like, oh, well, I want to be free to be able to do that. It's like, well, no, because there's limitations in the whole of society that's placed, that's for the game we play. And that's not the freedom which we play. So no, you're not going to do that.
And I think that's a good point. There's two types of freedom, I guess. There's the freedom of the individual. So I was thinking, how would I be the most free possible? Well, if it was for me, that's where it would, everything would be to my advantage. I wouldn't have to, get fined if I got caught switching across a pedestrian crossing across a road when there's a pedestrian crossing 20 meters away.
Yep.
I would be able to move about as I wanted. I would be able to, just get out of my car during traffic and just walk if I felt like it, and just leave my car there.
Yeah.
There's all these things. And then there's the society one, which is like, okay, we all have to abide by these rules just to be able to get along. And when you think about it, how so much of what you want to do depends on other people as well. I want to be free to travel to Mexico. Well, I can't do that if Mexico doesn't let me in. If they say no more Australians, and then it's like, well, that's not fair. So that's where I suppose you have to separate it out into the two.
My next point, though, there's even going away even more from the podcast, which is totally fine, because there's some points in it that I want to take away. But it's freedom. Now we're talking about freedom in the collective, in the society, and we've touched a little bit on the individuals. But now looking at more as a human, you individually, the freedom of oneself over your thoughts, your actions. So this is, if I even compare it with like the definition of Sebastian, where it's like, freedom is your ability to act, as opposed to maybe a greater power or a greater entity. And here I'm kind of looking at maybe the greater entity within an individual is whatever you want to call it, your ego, your subconscious, whatever. And then you've got your conscious, your little conscious that's just like, oh man, I'm just getting absolutely battered here by my amygdala that's telling me what to do. How do you find that you struggle a little bit with internal freedom? So this is, you think to yourself of, oh yes, I'm not going to think about, let's say for me, like I'm not going to think about the stock market or the charts going up and down, but you then get trapped in your own mind and you find no freedom in that. Like you cannot free yourself from these thoughts to go without.
I think it's possible. And I would say I've actually almost broken free of that in a little bit, in the sense that I think I've developed the ability to stop thinking in certain ways. And there's probably just through tons of introspection and then also tons of meditation.
Yep.
And I don't have that problem as much anymore. Like I used to lay awake sometimes in the night, and you get that one thought in your head. I remember particularly once when I was doing a workout and there was a sticker on the pull-up bars. Ooh. And I think it was like Gorilla Gong or Gorilla Kong street bar workouts or something.
Okay, yeah.
And that just repeated in my head. I could not get it out of my head for
the
whole hour. I didn't even look at the sticker anymore. I was trying to do reps and sets. This thing just kept appearing up, like 1 push-up, 2 push-ups, Gorilla Gong, shit. And it just kept on coming and coming.
Dang.
Nowadays, I don't think I really get that as much.
Yeah, okay.
As much.
Because, my question was going to be, is it useful to be free of those thoughts, those continual thoughts?
Yes.
So
I would say yes.
Yes.
I don't think there's a downside to being able to switch out of
and
that. If
for
needed.
you, what's your... So is there a trigger? Is there an activity that you do, like in a full day spectrum? Is there an activity that you do that? Or is it now like just a part of everyday life? You've got that freedom now.
I think it's not fighting it. I think that's the key criteria. When you
Not
really
fighting it.
try and fight it, that's when it gets stuck in your mind. If you're like, just accept that it's there, sort of like the rage of, a close call on the road or something.
Yep.
If you focus on it, if you really try
You
and
like
focus
acutely get into it. Yeah.
and even like really focus on trying to get rid of it or whatever. I think there's something weird about being able to meditate for a while, and then you something happens to you and you just go, okay, like just being able to say, okay, that's enough. And and then it usually goes away after that.
Yeah, and I think this is, I'm going to say this and I'm going to make sure that it is right, so I'll bounce it off you. So, freedom, when it comes to the internal section, like, internally looking at it, it's not so much about avoidance. It's almost about like the acceptance and almost like accepting it, bringing it in, and then moving towards being free of that rather than just kind of avoiding it altogether or just acutely focusing and moving away. So I think that might feel like it's freedom if you just like avoid it altogether. But in the end, it's just going to come back at some point or another at a later time. That's sort of like the perspective of, like, say you want trying to sleep and you've got all these things going through your mind. So you're like, okay, well, I need to be free. I need to be able to just go to sleep. I'm going to take some pills. You fall asleep, you wake up, cool, okay, I slept then, but you're not truly free. Like, you didn't achieve freedom there. You didn't earn the freedom there of, maybe getting rid of that. That's probably going to take, whether it's meditation, whether it's other active practices, whatever, to be able to be free of that, or at least accepting of those thoughts, and then being able to be free to do whatever you want.
Yeah, and then it's it's so much dependent on your upbringing, your IQ. Someone has an IQ of 100, they're not going to be able to think the same thoughts as someone with a 140. Or someone with a 170, and that might not be. Maybe that's a good thing. I think the higher your intellect is, the more prone you are to depression. So that's not necessarily a great thing.
Great thing. That's right.
But
that's right.
Then it's also linked to higher wages, a happier life in general. So it's like, well, geez,
I'd love to meet
I
don't know if there's a billionaire with an IQ of 60, but I'd love to meet that person if that would exist. That would be so good. So it'd be, the story would be like, like I put all $300 into Dogecoin or some random thing. I saw a news article the other day that said it's either two brothers or two friends in New York put $267 onto like a meme coin. Woke up the next day and they were millionaires. So it'd be like that sort of thing. I'd be like, I'd love to speak to you.
Yeah, there's not that. I don't know of that one, but I know the other version where it's a guy with a 170, 180 who was doing like all these PhDs and something, PhD when he was 19 years old, stuff like that. And then just gave it up and went to work on a farm, just had like bought a house, like made some money, bought a farm, and then was just chilling out there with his wife.
Dang.
And I was like, okay.
Interesting. I like that.
Yeah.
Okay. I want to talk about the things you didn't like about the podcast.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there's a couple of random ones. So putting women on the front line, that jumped out at me. I was like, So in it, he was basically saying a lot of these riots where people would be protesting or going on strike, they'd get women to go on the front line. Violence was another big topic on the podcast. And they'd put women on the front line. And that was just because the other side, no matter how bad they were, no matter how tyrannical, still didn't really want to punch a woman in the face. I went, there you go.
I know where Sebastian has like reported, like it's been in, I think in Afghanistan and a couple of other places. I just feel like there's some place in the world where they just wouldn't give a shit.
Yeah, there's a good one between Israel and Palestine. And they were saying a lot of the Palestinians would use, their own children and women and wives as sort of human shields. So they would bring them to their base of operations. They would go to the hospital and, do their operations out of there because counting on the fact that the Israelis wouldn't do, bomb the hospital. But then vice versa, if the Israelis did it, the Palestinians would probably just be like, fuck it. Sam Harris was saying that, so if that's totally wrong, blame Sam Harris.
Blame me. I mean, if you've looked into, and I just recently listened to this about the Armenian genocide and how it went down over 30 years, basically. Have a read about like the 30-day, basically death walks that they made them do and just kill them all anyways. It doesn't matter if you were a female, kid, whatever. There was no stopping of just killing, so everyone was getting killed. So I took that and went, okay, I get what you're saying, but I feel like there's some places that there's whatever, it's exactly. Not going to work anyways.
Exactly.
I don't know. Did you disagree though with the sending females to the front line?
Oh no, but if it works, if
that was the interesting one of talking of freedom. And look, I obviously cannot say anything about in this regard because I'm not a female, nor that I've been to the front lines. I don't know either of these things, but I feel like there would be a real complex conversation to have in between. Like, let's just say tomorrow World War III begins. Bang, we're on, right? We're fighting, who knows? The aliens came, we're fighting them. And they say, all right, everybody at the front line, conscription, everybody's between 19 to 30 years old, you have to go fight, right? Everybody. And I'm saying like everybody, including females, including anybody. Do you think there's going to be a conversation there that we have to be like, oh no, we have to have freedom. No, we can't send them.
No, the conversation would be, is this logistically a smart thing to do? Is this practically, people with an IQ of less than, what was it? It was like 82 or something, do more damage to the army than they do help.
Yep.
So it would be the same thing. Can this person operate in the best way? And
this goes back to, and I think people get maybe insulted, maybe don't understand that concept, but it's the fact that, again, like there's freedom to the individual and there's freedom to the collective. And sometimes like if you, of the collective, as you say, like say something IQ of 2 comes in, right? And it's like, and they really like their freedom, like in their mindset of freedom and whatever they could think at that point is
not much, man.
Yeah. But if they were like, I want to fight for my country, I want to have that freedom, but is actually negatively affecting the ability for the country to be free, then which one's right?
Definitely the country.
Right?
Definitely the country.
But okay, so what would you say definitely the country? I don't disagree.
Because that other person then, if the country loses, they're not going to have anything. So, whatever the freedom that is driving them to fight for their country, whatever those feelings are, they're going once that country falls.
Ooh, okay, maybe here's an interesting one because it just brought me up in more of the conversation about freedom. So if you had, we'll take it away from something we know where there's Australians. I'm gonna create 2 random countries. Let's just call them Tanzania and Wanagos.
Okay.
Tanzania and Wanagos. Now, if in Tanzania there is 1 million people and there's 10,000 people who are asking to be free, right? And they're battling the other country to be free. And then the other one, there's, let's just say 1,000 people and 100 people want to be free, right? And let's just say in this war, other people can come in and help out to kind of help out the countries. To free them. So like they're battling, but you can be like, let's just say a really big power can come in and be like, okay, we're going to help you out to be free and we're going to just decimate the other ones.
What do you mean to be free? Like as in the Wanagos want to be free of their own country or they want to be...
Let's say free of their own country. So like say that there's these groups in here, like let's imagine...
I'm so confused. Why are they battling the other people?
Okay, maybe the example was going too deep. My question I was trying to get to is what makes the freedom of the bigger picture of like Australia, why is that freedom, the collective freedom, more important than the individual freedom?
Yeah, so that would just be, I guess, overall utility. Well, it's more your freedom is predicated on the freedom of the big one.
Like, is your freedom subservient to the bigger freedom?
I would say in most of these cases, yeah.
Yeah.
Like you can't enjoy your freedoms without Australia having
their freedoms. Yeah. Okay, maybe that's a good point because and that brings me like the context of say a business or something else where I've had it. Lots of people, I'm sure I've experienced it with it. Is like you're an individual as an entity within the bigger company, and it's like, well, you want all these freedoms, but you've got to be subservient to the freedoms of the company, because if that doesn't get followed along, well, there's no company for you to have any freedoms with. So there's that maybe disconnection of people going like, oh, what about my freedom? Well, okay, but there is a bigger freedom to maybe look at as well.
Yeah. Cool. All right, let's get on to why I didn't particularly like it. So first of all, I want to say the good thing. So he's a pretty cool guy. I like that he's done all of these things, that he's pursued them, relentlessly, going after what he wants. The trek, that idea of just walking along the rail lines, sounds pretty cool. That's a bold thing to do, and mad respect for that.
Speaking of the trek, I was going to ask you this. So do you think that would be, because he talked about, so he did the trek and then wrote, when he actually wrote the book Freedom, he's basically juxtaposing that walk plus things that he's learned through his life, right? In terms of the book structure. Do you reckon that taking such a trip would help you find freedom?
I think travel is good for almost like eliminating mental barriers that you might have. So for me, it was, the being scared of going to another country where I couldn't speak the language. So here's a funny thing. Not sure if I ever told you. When I traveled to Chile for the first time, like I'd been to New Zealand before, but other than that, nowhere else. The first time I traveled there, as soon as the plane landed, I was content. Like no matter what happened from there, even if I got absolutely robbed, all my money stolen, had to return on the flight the very next day, I would have been pretty happy.
I did it.
Yeah, I wouldn't have had any issues or hang-ups with related to that. I don't know, man. Finding freedom, like you said, it's a big word when you're using it in that sense.
Yeah, exactly. That maybe I would shift it, but whatever the feeling is, it's almost sometimes those bigger adventures, those bigger journeys that maybe they seem a little bit daunting or whatnot. When you do them, it helps you maybe realize like, oh shit, I can actually do this, or I do have the freedom to do and go and do these things that I might think are, nonsense to begin with, but actually no, I can go and do them. So, my point behind that was I think that those sort of treks or journeys or adventures within reason, I think are good to do because they maybe give you, whether it's perspective, whether it opens your eye to the fact that, oh, actually I can do this, or I am free to go and do this. Like, I'm sure when I do this 96 kilometer hike, like before I'm going to be like, man, I don't think we're going to be able to make this. It's going to be ridiculous. Maybe there'll be times where I'll be like, oh no, this is going to be good. But through it, I'll almost look back on it now and being like, oh, well, dang, I've got the freedom to not walk as much. Or actually, it feels freeing to the fact that I know that I can go and do something like that. So I don't know. I think it gives you more perspectives and more views with some of these adventures. So.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Coolies. All right. So there was two main things that really three actually. Yeah. So
Sebastian, mate.
He's ticked off he's annoyed the Kyrin Meister.
Good.
And look, it's a random dude on the internet. Take that into consideration.
But Kyrin's about to roast Sebastian Junger.
This is not really anything to do with freedom. It's nothing really to do with the podcast. This is me griping a little bit.
This is Kyrin going loose.
It maybe gives you a bit of an understanding of me and my personality and what I dislike in other people.
Good. This is going to be good. This is going to be good.
I'm very suspicious of his advice.
Okay.
So right towards the end, Tim was asking him, about these couple of things that he was recommending to everyone. And the problem with that is it's okay, in this context, Tim was asking him advice and, like I've said many times before, I don't particularly dish out advice, but if people are asking me for it, that's a different story. Yep. The problem is he's a very selfish dude. So he admitted this himself, in all his younger years. So he was 57-ish, I'm guessing around that age. He was saying, I just did whatever the hell I wanted. Like I was able to take risks with my own life in this war reporting because I had no one attached to even, family ties. He didn't really talk about his parents or whatnot or siblings. That's okay. There's still more riskier people out there. He said he was, conscious of the risks and wouldn't take overly. But that being said, his best friend, who he was going to travel with, got killed in wherever it was.
I can't recall. But yes, he was supposed to go with him as well.
And probably would have died in a similar manner.
Yeah.
So he's a selfish dude by all accounts.
Yep.
And when he was saying the things that he thinks as people as a whole should do. I was like, suspicious. So he's old now. And all the things that he was sort of suggesting were stuff that I don't think he would have listened to when he was young. So it's sort of now that he's like reached his old age, it's like, I'm going to tell people things they can do to help me. So what can you do? You can contribute in these following ways. You can contribute by joining the army or military service, Well, that's benefiting him by keeping his country safe. You can contribute by giving blood. Well, obviously that helped him because he got 10 liters of the damn stuff. And voting is the other one. That one's maybe you can get away with a little bit, but still. It was especially the blood one. So there's the quote. Oh, I'm going to start to give blood. This is a bloody year later after his thing. Now, I looked at this and I was like, he said he did it while he was writing the book. The book was published in June. Well, basically, I figured out that it was a year. It was a year ago that he had this accident. And so, look, maybe you can't give blood a year after you've been donated all this stuff.
Perhaps.
But he said, I'm going to start. Mate, don't be out there recommending people to give blood willy-nilly and you're not even doing it. That was bullshit. The other one, and this is just a general advice one, was, right at the end, Tim asked him about having kids because he was having kids in his old age and, had a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old daughter. The balls on this man to give advice to a dude who, once again, barely knew. I don't think they've ever met in person. No. So they've had 2 podcasts together. And then advising someone to do that who you barely know to take like one of the biggest plunges you could, like the biggest responsibilities you can do, and just be like, do it. The more the better. Let's get it on. I just found that so ridiculous. So those are my little gripes. Hey, Sebastian, maybe if I meet you in person, you're a cool dude. But
maybe. I think Sebastian's going to be wanting to meet Kyrin now,
and that's fine.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think you. There's some views.
But you liked him, did you? That was your general impression.
I didn't like him nor dislike him.
Okay,
but I liked some of the topics in it. Sparked my mind.
Yeah. Okay.
Not that I fully got on board with some of the ways that he was coming on board with it. I like the way he was presenting it. Didn't make me want to go read his books. Okay. Let's just say that. I didn't rush out to be like, I'm going to go get some of these books.
Yeah, no, actually, speaking of, so you've saved me a lot of time. So thank you, my friend, because that was a 1-2 hour podcast, something like that. I had one of his books on my list. I crossed it off because I don't particularly want to read it.
Yeah. I was thinking actually before even listening to that podcast of getting Freedom to actually read it because somebody else mentioned it in another podcast somewhere.
Yeah, okay.
And after listening to that, I was like, no, I'm not gonna go through that.
Yeah. I had in my mind Tribe because Joe Rogan's talked about it a lot of times.
There you go.
I had a feeling. I thought it was going to be like a super scientific book talking about Dunbar's number, and maybe it does talk about that. But he's not a scientist, so it's not going to be the type of book that I was expecting. And after seeing that, I'm like, yeah.
There you go.
Not sure if I...
2 hours to save you probably like 15 hours worth of time on the...
Yeah, probably not 15. I doubt his book was that big, but you've saved me probably an hour or two, so thank you, Juan.
There you go. That. That's good. That's basically it from the questions that I had from that podcast.
I didn't have anything else, so mere mortal moment.
Mere mortal moment. Mine is actually... Oh, yes, we'll go mere mortal moment first.
I'll do mine. Just because they ask doesn't mean you should tell. So this is just getting what I was saying. Just because someone is asking you about something does not mean you necessarily have the knowledge about it. Does not necessarily mean you should give advice on that particular topic. This is more what I gained from listening to Sebastian. I thought, I don't want to be that person. So if someone's asking me, Kyrin, you're doing okay, financially. What are your thoughts on the crypto scene? I'm going to be like, I don't know shit, mate.
Yeah.
Go ask one.
Go ask somebody else. Actually, you know who does that really well? Weirdly? Gary Vaynerchuk. He does that really well. And I don't know if you've ever noticed that. But because you sometimes will listen to him and he'll talk about, I don't know, something he does know. And he'll just talk fucking rampantly for an hour about it. And you're like, oh shit, this dude's too much. But in a lot of podcasts and videos I've seen of him, someone will ask him something about crypto. Like someone will, there was a recent one. Someone was like, what about Dogecoin? Like, should you buy Dogecoin? And he was basically like, in the short of it, he was like, look, I don't fucking know. He was just like, I don't fucking know. Like he like was very clean about it. He's like, oh, him and his brother owned Dogecoin the day after it was made, literally the day after. But apart from that, he's like, I have no idea. Like I literally, because they were like, oh, what about what Elon Musk is saying and blah 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 blah. And he's like, look, I don't know.
Yeah.
Ask me about Flip Life or ask me about NFTs or whatever. He's been studying that, but otherwise, I have no fucking fight in it. I think that's a good point though, that mere mortal moment, because I like that even if you get asked for advice, if you don't know about it, it's okay to say you don't know about it. Like it's totally okay.
Yeah.
I've actually learned more and more of that with work, because a lot of the times now I'm in a position where it's in the old school ways, people might look at it and be like, oh, well, you're like this manager, so you should know everything there is to know. So sometimes someone will come up to him and be like, oh, there's this has happened. Like, what should we do? What do we go? And I'm totally fine being like, I kind of have an idea of what we could do, but I'll lead with being like, well, look, firstly, I don't know. Like, I don't even know what you do. Like, we're talking about it. Let's go figure it out together or something like that. Because to be honest, yes, I could say something, but I don't really know as much as what's going on really in that point. Let's go and figure that out. So I like that. I think that's a good takeaway. Sebastian, listen in, mate. Listen in.
I got the knowledge
to the wisdom. So take Kyrin's advice.
Ask me anything.
Ask Kyrin's advice. Mine was freedom doesn't wander around waiting to be picked up. It must be achieved. So freedom isn't just waiting in the halls, chilling out for you to grab. Nah, you got to achieve it. So whether it's, say, fitness, whether it's whatever else, you got to actually put some actions towards freedom. You got to put some limitations, some boundaries, or else you have just anarchy and ain't gonna work.
Very nice. So, very nice.
Next podcast.
Yes.
Next thing.
I am very shortly going on a little meditation.
And by shortly, you mean tomorrow?
Yes, very shortly. And you won't
literally
notice,
like 14 hours.
You won't notice a gap in the recordings, but we have done a little bit of pre-recording. So that'll be continuing on. So the most freedom you can get, and your homework is to fit in between now and the next time that you listen to the Mere Mortals, or maybe I'll have to see. Maybe we'll have a month of goals mixed in between. So maybe you get a little reprieve, but you need to go out, do 6 full days of 8 hours of meditation a day. That's what I'm hoping to do. If I actually do that or not, let's see. Maybe I'll go crazy. Yep. And so we're going to be talking about I'm not sure. Retreat, maybe. I'm not sure what I call it. Something about meditation, something about being on a retreat.
What we should talk about
actually
is
more, maybe, I think, because the main purpose I'm doing this is to be on my own. So being alone or loneliness or something like that might be.
How about solitude?
Solitude.
Because loneliness is different to solitude is what you're actually after. You don't have to loneliness, you have to solitude.
Yeah, that's it. All right, awesome.
Solitude. Good. All right, well, we talked about freedom, but there is one more law that I'm going to impose on the folks out there. And it is that if you've been listening to the Mere Mortals podcast, I'm not saying you have to listen to the Mere Mortals podcast. I'm not that sort of tyrant.
Yeah, I am. I'm changing mine to 2 hours a day of Mere Mortals.
Oh, well, benevolent tyrant Juan here will say that all you have to do is, the mandatory law is that if you've watched the podcast, you must tell another friend. You must tell someone else. Tell them, look, Juan the tyrant has said, I must tell you. He's going to make me do an hour of cardio. Or you can go watch it. So that's how you can get saved. Yeah. You can either watch 2 hours of Mere Mortals podcast, or you can tell a friend and then they have to watch an hour. Yeah. And then they can give it on. So it passes down. And so,
or tell a friend for 2 hours.
Tell them for 2 hours about the Mere Mortals podcast in your own way. Yeah. Just as we're doing. So we're talking about Sebastian Junger's podcast with Tim Ferriss. Yeah. And we're talking about it here. You go tell your friend in another 2 hour podcast
third-hand information. Just how we like it.
In the end, it'll get back to Sebastian Junger and it'll be something like, Kyrin was saying that Sebastian was just like a piece of shit.
Kyrin's coming after you.
You're saying he's trying to find your house.
Watch your back. You have no freedom anymore. Yeah. You've got a crazy stalker on your case.
Dang. Anyways, folks, that's basically it.
Thank you, people.
You are now free
to this
to take
I appreciate
off.
It.
Do all the good things. Like, follow, subscribe, blah, 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 blah. Leave a comment, leave a review. That is all for now. Folks, Juan out.
Kyrin out. Bye. Freedom.